Hello, everyone. Welcome on my channel for this ninth edition of the monthly International Anti-Communist Conference. So let me present my guest to you. First, Dr. Li Menyan. She's a very well-known Chinese PhD independent virologist who is part of the Chinese dissidents with Mr. Wang of Lude Media. And so she's the host of The Voice of Dr. Yan. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Next is Trevor Loudon, representing Australia and New Zealand. He's now an American, but he has lived the first part of his life in New Zealand. And he has written many books. And his new book about Anthony Albanese is Comrade Prime Minister, which unmasks Australia's Prime Minister Albanese hidden communist ties amidst global tensions. So he will talk to us about this new book. Welcome, Trevor.
Welcome. Well, thank you very much, Sean. And thanks to good to see everybody.
Yeah. So next is Jeff Nyquist, representing the USA. Jeff is the author of many books. Your latest is The Lies We Believe In. Your website is grnyquist.blog. Good afternoon, Jeff. So yeah, ask everybody to cut his mic while I'm speaking, so that's fine.
And, sorry, good afternoon.
So we also have one new guest, Emmett Connor. He's an Irish author of the book Red Pandemic, The Global Marxist Cult. Welcome on the show, Emmett.
Thank you, John. Great to be here, and it's an honor to be with such great panelists. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we were supposed to have a surprise guest, so I guess it will be there on the next show. He will remain a surprise. And so I'm Jean Robin, representing France, and the author of more than 60 books in French, and 2 have been translated in English, What the World Owes to Protestantism, and France is a Colony of Communist China. So if you're interested in our books, you can find them on Amazon. And your book is on Amazon too, Emmett?
Yes, it's available on a bunch of different platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and it's all through the distribution network, really.
Okay, great. And so I'm also developing the anti-communism activity with this monthly international conference that I organize, and also the website IRCOE that I created. So I'm going to show it to you again. It's here. And so it's ircoe.wordpress.com. So you have the link in the description. And so lately I have published 2 new exclusive interviews after the ones of Jean Nyquist and Dr. Li Menyan. Here you have interviews of Emmett Connor and Trevor Loudon. So they're exclusive interviews, so you can't find anywhere else. And so here's Cliff Kincaid, for example. We saw Jean Nyquist's blog. Drew Pavlou, anti-CCP guy. And here is the Dynamic Independence show, which I highly recommend, with Jean Nyquist, Trevor Loudon, and Jimmy from Brooklyn. And here is the exclusive interview of Trevor and the exclusive interview of Emmett. So you can find that on this website. And it's a really great website, obviously, when you're of the resistance, the anti-communist resistance. So I strongly recommend you read both of these exclusive interviews. Trevor's interviews about Trump's election, Australia, New Zealand, and Emmett's interviews about Marxism, his book, and also the critical situation in Ireland, where he's from. And since all of this takes time and energy, if you want me to continue and develop this activity, you can support IRCOE on Patreon or by sending Bitcoins even. And all the required information are on the page, how to support IRCOE. And I have a lot of projects, ideas, and anti-communists to discover all around the world and to get in touch with. So a little help is definitely needed if you want to help me eradicate communism from the face of the earth. So let me remind you the principle of the show. We have 5 guests from 5 different countries who are going to bring you accurate and anti-communist report of what has been going on in their country for the past month, and to discuss with the other guests about what is going on in their own country. So Jeff will start, as usual, with his country, the USA.
Well, of course, now the U.S. is in a grip of a kind of panic over these drone swarms going over U.S. military bases. Some bases have even been closed because of the danger to air traffic. It's a very complex subject because it raises the question of UFOs, the question of possible foreign drones like Chinese drones, which some congressmen have alleged they believe it's Chinese communist drones flying over our bases. There are those that are saying they are our drones. But it's interesting. And of course, people are feeling very vulnerable because if it's foreign drones, it means we're really vulnerable to attack. We don't have an effective way to down the drones. And the arguments and the analysis is extremely deep. Newsweek magazine published on the 18th an article in which they quoted a leading congressman saying that he believed it's the Chinese. There was also arrested near Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, a Chinese national who was operating a drone over Vandenberg, taking photographs of the base. So they haven't identified this Chinese national who was doing it. There is an analysis from Ross Coulthart, the veteran Australian journalist, and Lou Elizondo about what these drones are. Lou Elizondo, because of the bizarre reports of really UFO-like behavior from these drones, Elizondo has speculated that there is a UFO, UAP phenomenon, that the US has then sent its drones after the phenomenon, so that you're seeing both government drones and anomalous phenomenon on each other's heels.
Can you, Jeff, can you clarify what UAP means?
UAP means unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And one of the things is people have reported seeing these drones coming out of the water, going into the air. The drones are more like orbs. These drones, these UAP, UFO, the designation UFO is unidentified flying object. That was very famous for a long time. But because these things are seen under the water and they come from the water to the sea and then back again, they decided to rename them as UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, because they're anomalous, they're unidentified, and they transit between different mediums. They see them in space, they see them under the water, they see them in the atmosphere. And of course, this is a mystery having to do with, are they secret weapons projects of Russia and the US, which is some allegations along those lines? Are they some kind of supernatural phenomenon or natural phenomenon we do not understand? Extraterrestrial is, a lot of people like that theory. So you have this complex attempt to understand what it is. And of course, whenever we have these UFO, UAP flaps, there is a kind of hysteria that attends it. Especially now, we had my friend Frank Gaffney, and we had Gordon Chang saying, look, these are Chinese. Saying these are our drones, that they are Department of Energy sniffers looking for a dirty nuke. That I think Gordon Chang said something like there's a higher radiation levels in Connecticut. I don't know where they're getting this. I got to admit to being skeptical, but this could be all part of the hysteria. And of course, Medvedev, the former president of the Russian Federation and deputy head of the Russian Security Council, Defense Council, has said that the Ukrainians are planning a false flag nuclear event in the US, which further adds to the rumors and the confusion. So this is kind of what we're contending with right now in the US.
And how do you explain the lack of information from the government?
Well, John Kirby, I'll give you a quote from John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman. This is what he said. "We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat or have a foreign nexus." Then the day before yesterday, was it, in Congress, and the congressmen were pretty upset with their briefers. One called it amateur hour, where the government said they're not our drones and they're not foreign. And they tried to make the implication that they're private drones of American citizens violating the law by going onto the bases. But this does not match what we're seeing. And the government has the ability to shoot down civilian drones. They'll shoot down. You take a civilian drone over a base, they will catch you, like they caught that Chinese national off of Vandenberg. They will catch you. So this is really strange. The government's not apparently shooting them down. Some of the drones do appear to look like U.S. government drones, but then there's the anomalous ones. So one of the possibilities raised by Ross Coulthart is that there's a rogue government group in the U.S. that's super secret that is doing something. That's very disturbing, and that goes to there's a kind of corruption. Now President Trump, there's a kind of corruption in this secrecy and this denial of what's going on and this confusing covering everything up. President Trump made a statement, and I have it here and I can read it. It's very short about the drones, and I think it's worth reading. Trump said, "The government knows what is happening. Our military knows where the drones took off from. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep the people in suspense." That even makes it more curious, right?
And he talked about the enemy as well. If it's the enemy, we should shoot them down or something like that. No?
Yeah. And I just, I hope when the new administration comes in, they're going to be forthcoming. One interesting point, the UFO disclosure movement, a lot of people that are pro-disclosure, whatever UFO UAPs are being put into this administration. And it looks like Trump is signaling, look, I'm going to be more transparent about what this is. Trump seems to know. And, there's all kinds of murky intelligence games and psychological warfare surrounding this. So I hope we're going to find out, because this really is creating a panic in the U.S.
Trevor, what's your take on that? Oh, you're muted. I need to unmute.
Yeah, well, I can't add much to what Jeff has said. There's, one theory is that there's nuclear material or a dirty bomb, been smuggled into the country, and people are out looking for it, trying to detect it. But there's also, there's drones now coming up in California, I think Utah, other places. So this isn't, I don't know too, I remember the story of Carl Jung, when he commented on flying saucers one time and unidentified flying objects and called them symbolic. But when people actually interviewed them, he said, no, they're real. They are real. They actually do exist. They are real things. So I'm a bit nonplussed, actually. I'm just hoping, like Jeff does, that when Trump takes over, we're going to get to the bottom of this, unless something really nefarious happens between now and then. The dirty bomb is let off, or some kind of confrontation occurs. But yes, it is causing a panic.
And doesn't it look like a coordinated attack, maybe on the psyche, not on the land? But talking about the land, you have one senator who said in New Jersey, he warned a year ago that the CCP has been buying a lot of lands in New Jersey, especially where most of the drones came from in the first place. So couldn't it be that the CCP is using these lands to launch these drones and then create a panic?
Yeah, well, exactly, a psychological panic, or in preparation for a war or something like that. It's but the CCP has land all over the country, and this is part of a conscious. The CCP buying land is part military, but it's also when they buy land, when they set up plants, tire plants or battery plants, they create a political constituency in that area. They have lots of people depending on them, lots of lawyers depending on them, business people, supply chains, etc. So there's a conscious CCP program to start large businesses in every state in America to basically get political influence, so that any senator or congressman from that state who is in any way anti the CCP will be very, very shortly unelected. So there's all sorts of factors, and then you get the big marijuana farms in places like Oklahoma, which are completely controlled by the CCP. So they make money doping up our kids, and they get political influence at the same time. So yes, there's got to be a massive clean. The fact that this drone thing can go on, and it's so obvious to so many people, and nobody has the answers, shows me how deep foreign influence is in America. That nobody is able to get to the bottom of this, because clearly somebody doesn't want people to get to the bottom of it.
Well, thank you. Now, Dr. Li Mengyan, isn't the CCP the main suspect in this case, and do you have particular intelligence around it?
I would say that yes, we do have China's military civil fusion projects focusing on drones, the information intelligence. But currently, I would say that the situation which caused the panic in the United States is very complicated. And for now, I won't say that is initiated by China or is totally controlled by under the control of U.S. government. But the thing is, I would say that definitely there is info war tactics inside launched by Chinese Communist Party. They want muddle the water.
Thank you. Emmett, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, this is very interesting, isn't it? And my first thought immediately that this is some sort of reconnaissance initiative. I know people are throwing out different theories like the UFO thing, and in America they call it the deep state and so on. Maybe it is, but like if you look at the pattern of what's happening on a global scale with the ideology, the Russians are in Ukraine, the hatred for Israel is increasing in the Middle East, and the kind of the Chinese Navy's activities in the South China Sea. I'm thinking who's most likely the culprit in this? If it is reconnaissance, well, to me, it's probably a coalition of those groups, or some of those groups are involved in this. And also the fact that the drones have been hanging around military installations and also the power grids, as far as I know, or the power infrastructure, makes me think that they're trying to gather data. I have been predicting for a while. I don't think it will happen just yet, but I have been predicting for a while that it seems that the West is collapsing from what people call cultural Marxism and becoming militarily weak, while this new communist alliance is getting more militaristic and aggressive. So, looking at the global pattern, I think that something's definitely going on here. My money is on this new alliance, pretty much.
Thank you. Well, my take on this one is that I see the CCP all around. In French we say, well, I cannot translate it, but you see the CCP all over this thing. Just remind the spy balloon. That was not too long ago, and that was a Chinese. And even then, Biden didn't do what had to be done, like shoot the damn thing, as Trump said at the time. So they should have shot those drones. From what I read in the Newsweek article Jeff talked about, they were not amateur drones. They were professional drones. So this is a coordinated attack on the United States of America. Let's say it this way. Now, who did it and for what reason? It's left to see and to research. But we have convincing evidence now that the national Chinese has been taken into custody or whatever, that the CCP might be involved. And I'm 95% sure about this, because on this scale, you cannot organize this if you're not a power such as the CCP. Now, who could do that from the deep state? I hear this all the time from those nerds and nuts from travel. I'm sure the Tucker Carlsons of this world are talking, because Tucker Carlson has been talking a lot about the UFOs lately, and now it comes. It's a bit weird, or not weird, and so I don't think it's a danger for the US at the moment, but China might be collecting a lot of information, and that might be like they did with the Chinese balloon. So that's my take on it. And Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that there is, if you study the UAP UFO thing, you realize there is an intelligence game and there's a corruption game. And the most protected secrets, military secrets of the U.S. are the advanced technology, the advanced physics, And if you go and you look at it more carefully, you will see that we probably gained some things from Nazi Germany they were developing. And there was a big push in the 1950s to develop anti-gravity unconventional drive craft. And then suddenly in the early 1960s, this completely went out of all the magazines. It's almost as if they silenced everybody. They somehow diverted it. They somehow had a breakthrough maybe towards the late 50s. And of course, the suggestion here is that the US developed something. Maybe the Russians stole it or won it or have their own version, and that there's a competition here involving super weapons that the public doesn't know about, and that any sighting of unconventional craft opens the possibility that at the beginning of a war, you're going to see a UFO type phenomenon in terms of reconnaissance, in terms of psychological warfare. And this is kind of scary when you talk about it in these terms. So yes, it's alarming, and it craves wary watching.
Who wants to add something on this subject? Trevor?
Well, I'll just say that, if it's surveillance, it was only surveillance. The Chinese have so many assets in the country. They could do surveillance a lot more surreptitiously than flying drones over highly populated areas, which they know are going to be seen. And even after they did get seen, they didn't disappear. They just kept on coming. So to me, there's some psychological aspect of this. There's something more than just straight out surveillance. That may be part of it for sure, but I think there's a psychological factor that I don't fully understand.
Well, like they did with the with a spy balloon, right? It was for everybody to see. So it created a panic at the time, less than now, but it's the same. And it also took some information from military bases, because it followed a path from a military base to another.
Yeah, Jean, I should clarify, because I had dinner with General Van Herk, who was the guy that ordered those things shot down. I had dinner with him in September and with his deputies. And what he told me, he says, "Do you want to hear the story of the drones?" And I said, "Yes, please." And what he said is that the stupid Canadian government, well, he didn't say that, but I mean, the Canadian government let these things float through Canada. By the time it got to our territory, to be fair to President Biden immediately ordered them shot down. The minute they crossed into our territory, we were tracking them. We knew they were coming. And they were going to go over two of our major missile fields, our ICBM fields. But the problem was these things were massive, the weight of them. And the radius in which they would fall included human habitation. And the legal problem General Van Herk had was that if he shot the balloon down and it killed someone on the ground, he could be put on trial for killing those people, for causing their deaths. Because the law states that he can only risk human life on the ground if he is defending life, and the balloons weren't a threat to life. They were just going to take pictures, and they had sound equipment or radio equipment for monitoring our radio traffic around our ICBM bases. So what they did is they camouflaged everything. They cut their communications at the bases so that the Chinese wouldn't get anything. Then they waited till the balloons that had passed into the U.S. the balloon went off the coast, where they could shoot it down in the water and no one would get hurt. And then they recovered the payload. So they got all the Chinese. It was a win for us. The other balloon, then a fire got lit under Canada, and they shot them down in the wilderness of Alaska and Canada when the other ones came through. So that's kind of the story. So just to be fair to General Van Herk and NORAD, that's the story. And I just want to clarify that, because he told me that in person, the commander of NORAD at the time.
Thank you.
So just
Dr. Limenya? Yeah, thank you. Dr. Limenya?
Yeah, actually, I'm so happy to hear Jeff told us that, because this verified our independent source, which we get the intelligence from the very beginning when people start wondering why there is a balloon in US. And Udo and I have given this intelligence not in public, but through some of our channels to the US government. And the thing is, at the time, our source told us when this news come out the first time. So our source immediately in China told us that where these balloons were set off. And actually that is one of around 14 balloons come out from somewhere in Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia's nuclear base, secret base, that they send it out and using the west wind at that season to let it flow to the United States, to this continent, to do all the data collection and also surveillance things. But our source have also provided us one detail very important, that they said PLA has installed something hazard in the balloon. If the US government shoot it at that time, those hazard things will fall to the community. And we don't know what exactly integrate in these balloons, but this is a way that PLA to protect their equipment being obtained by the United States or this kind of balloons or shooting down. So they make this kind of special design. And this could be something involved. Our source said there very likely this kind of hazard thing includes the materials for dirty bombs. So these are the, so as Jeff said, that the US military, the commanders, they're worried about the human lives. I believe they can think more than that, and definitely they should have this expectation because such balloons come from the enemy's countries and conducting this kind of risky, high-risky espionage activities in your nuclear base, right? So once this balloons was shot down on a marked soil, definitely there will be the second disaster. And our source at that time have reminded us that the best way is to shoot it on the sea. So that's why when we say later these balloons was shot down on the sea, we feel very assured.
Okay, there's another aspect I wanted you to respond. Is the, as Jeff quoted Trump, he would act differently. So there's a problem with this Biden administration, and this is the last month of it. So don't you think that the Chinese, or the enemy, anyway, don't they want to take advantage of the situation where they still have this administration, pro-CCP administration? And especially since we have seen with the spying balloon, there was not the best game they could have played. I mean, we can at least agree on this one. Do you say that the Biden administration played the best game they could have played during the balloon problem? And now are they playing the best game they can? I mean, I think with Pete Hegseth as a new defense minister, he's going to get rid of all this DEI bullshit, if you excuse my French. And so this is a real problem at the Pentagon at the moment. We have all these retards who are taking care of the biggest army in the world and of the free world. So wouldn't you say that's a problem that Trump's going to solve, basically?
Ask me or ask Jeff?
Whomever. Who wants to talk about that? Yeah, you can start, Doctor.
Oh, I thought you were asking Jeff. So I don't think Biden administration has done very bad against the Chinese government, to be honest. You know that actually Hunter Biden's hard disk story was first reported by modern media in the world. Now it's get verified. So you know that we don't have this kind of bias that pro-Biden administration or pro whatever, because I have expressed my concern before in this forum that China by two sides, both sides. So someone in Biden's administration definitely set the obstacles for against the anti-CCP progress. But in Trump's administration, actually, we have already seen that, to be honest, these days chaos happened in DC, that Elon Musk become, people all call him President Musk, and they call Vice President Trump. And when he could incite people to block the bill to pass the House. And this is something really caused my concerns, and it posed a very serious potential, or you can say ongoing national security, national threats to security threats to the United States. And I could talk about that later. But the thing is, I don't think we could just rely on any of the party alone, because, and also, of course, not any of the leader. Because as a Chinese, I can tell you, Chinese people in the past over 2,000 years, we always been brainwashed with leaders. But none of the leaders can do the things alone without a good system. So the thing is, the United States can be the leader of the freedom, the beacon of freedom in the world is because of the system, especially the separation of power. So this kind of independence must be insisted, cannot be ruined. So the thing is, I'm very concerned. The good thing is yesterday's short-term bill was not passed. And for the future new administration, I hope that Trump administration could insist on the all this kind of U.S. system, which has been founded for over 200 years, and also insist the independence in different agencies and also in the government, and that would maximally guarantee the United States maintain democracy and the leadership in the world, and also that's the fundamental for the United States government to launch anything against the communist China government.
Thank you. So who wanted to react to the fact that there's a small window now that the CCP could take it, or the enemies of the free world could take advantage of? Still 1 month, we're the 20th of December. Trump is nominated on the 20th of January. Can the CCP and the other communists try something in this small window? Jeff or Trevor or Emmett, go ahead. Who wants to speak?
Yeah, I've got something on that actually. The way I see the international Marxist movement is that, as we know, they like to use obfuscation, the whole wolf in sheep's clothing thing, and they managed to get away with gaining so much ground and getting so much control without a lot of people noticing what they're doing. But now the world is starting to wake up what they're all about. And the same thing is happening in America like anywhere else. So I definitely think you're onto something, Jean, that the window of opportunity is kind of closing for them, because when Western countries start to realize what's going on, they'll start to bolster themselves and, go back to having military strength, get rid of all the DEI crap from the military and the gender quotas and all this nonsense, and start to kind of stand their ground. And that includes getting rid of the climate change movement, any of the traitors in the Western governments and the military as well. And so I think that as the more time goes by, I think that that window of opportunity is going to close, progressively speaking.
Great. Let's be optimistic. Trevor.
Well, I agree with Emmett. It's if I were the Chinese, right now we have war in Ukraine, we have war in the Middle East. Russia has suffered a lot with Syria. Russia is suffering in Ukraine. China wants to attack, but it really wants to go with Russia, and Russia is suffering right now. I think it all depends on what happens with Trump when he gets into office and how he deals with Russia and Ukraine. If he's weak and tries to get Ukraine to give up territory with no meaningful guarantees, no membership of NATO or anything like that, they can't join NATO, but something strong that's reliable. I think China, Iran, North Korea are going to really, really suffer. I think their influence is going to go down. But if Trump is led by the Russia party in his own party, the Tucker Carlson's, his own son, Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk to a degree, I think we can see that they might snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and hand Putin a major victory, which will then encourage China, will encourage Iran, encourage a whole bunch of aggression around the world. So I don't think anything so much is going to happen in the next month. I think what is really going to decide things is how Trump deals with Ukraine.
And so how do you...
Sorry.
Now, this was a follow-up. How do you interpret what has been said by the Trump administration and Trump himself ever since he's been elected for this past month?
Well, he sent a lot of mixed messages. You know, he'll deal with Zelensky and come out talking quite positive. Then he says things publicly, like he did on the Time interview, that Ukraine should get used to having less support from the United States. I am still bullish. I think Trump is going to take quite a hard line on Russia. I think he's definitely going to open up the energy fields, which will hurt Putin. I don't think he's going to give up on Ukraine and just force Zelensky into a deal. I don't think Zelensky and his government would take that. I think that Trump will, in the final analysis, be quite tough on Putin, and I'm hoping I'm correct in that.
And so, Jeff, do you think those mixed messages that Trevor is talking about is to remain unpredictable, or is it something else?
When was it when Trump was meeting with the French president? He was wearing a blue blazer with a yellow tie. Those are the national colors of Ukraine. I think that people in Russian strategists who saw that read it and took a hard gulp. I think Trump plays hardball, and I may be reading it wrong. And you're right; it's about mixed signals. But when you put that kind of thing on as clothing, and you give that kind of signal, I think he is going to grind the Russians. And I don't know what their response to that is. I think they're worried, and I think the Chinese government is worried too.
Yeah, there's the TikTok story. I made a video yesterday, so it's still fresh in my mind. The TikTok story is developing a lot. Like there was this court in the US that said you can't invoke freedom of expression to have TikTok not banned. Okay, and then TikTok president met with Trump. And Trump said, yeah, well, I kind of like TikTok. But during the campaign, he said, I love TikTok. So it's a different change of tone.
I will make one comment. The Russians practice provocation it's just almost flows out of them, you know. And Trump he's the only Western politician that uses provocation. So he does these little deceptions and little provocations, and he draws them out, and then he turns around and that helps them sort of measure where they are, and then he hits them. And we saw it during his first term. I think he's going to keep using it.
Yeah, it's true that we're not used to that in the West. But now to finish with TikTok, so on the 10th of January, so 10 days before Trump is inaugurated, we'll have the Supreme Court, because TikTok was able to ask the Supreme Court to change this ban, basically, that will happen on the 19th of January, so the day before Trump is inaugurated. And so there will be a lot of things happening on the 10th and then on the 19th. And if TikTok is able to continue, then it will be Trump's choice to do whatever he can. Yeah, Jeff, you wanted to say something?
Yes. No, I mean, that's the thing, is that Trump, if you watch Trump maneuvering, he maneuvers to keep his freedom of action. He is late to commit. Look at what he did with Little Rocket Man in North Korea. He met with him after this song and dance where they were threatening to push the button. Who had the bigger button? Remember, everybody was freaking out. And then he meets with them. They're going to make this big deal. And Trump goes, no, I don't think there's going to be a deal. And Little Rocket Man got so angry, he executed a number of his foreign ministry officials out of a sheer pique. So, yeah, and I mean, Trump really messed with his head. So, you should not underestimate this guy. This guy may not have the knowledge that some of the people here have, but man, he's got instincts and he's got a bag of tricks of his own.
True. Anybody wants to add anything about the US before we go on another subject? Well, Trevor, it's you're still from the US. I mean, you're in the US and you're from Australia and New Zealand. Do you want to talk to us about what these elections are gonna do with Albanese? You just written a book about Albanese, so yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that because, look, one of the key things with Trump is going to be confronting China. You know, this is going to be the looming battle of his administration, and I would love to see him See, when Trump was in the first time, he was really working with the South Koreans and the Taiwanese, the Japanese to some degree, the Australians, who had a conservative prime minister, and the Indians to freeze out the Communist Party of China, to put huge pressure on the CCP, to hopefully cause a collapse of the government. Well, now we've got a situation where South Korea is hanging in the breach. The communists have just deposed the anti-communist president of South Korea, and we don't know what's going to come out of that. So that's a problem. India has sort of, I think, wants to go with the West, but they've been cozying up to Russia a little bit because to defend themselves from the CCP. So Australia is a very critical part of this anti-Chinese alliance. It's the linchpin right down in the South Pacific, connected to Australia, to New Zealand. They've just done a big deal. They did it. The Conservative Prime Minister of Australia did a big deal with the United States to buy 4 nuclear warships. And I know that France lost out on that deal, Jean, and they were not very happy about that. Well, Anthony Albanese is now trying to sabotage that deal so it doesn't go through. Anthony Albanese is the most pro-Chinese, was described recently as the most pro-China Prime Minister Australia has had since Gough Whitlam in the 70s. And Gough Whitlam was deposed by the Governor General of Australia because he was basically a communist going outside the Constitution. So I write the book there's an election coming up in Australia in May. And the Conservatives are slightly ahead right now. Anthony Albanese has a 40-year history with the communist movement. He was started with the Communist Party of Australia in the 1980s. That morphed into an organisation called the Search Foundation in 1990, funded with the Australian Communist Party's money. This new organisation works with Democratic Socialists of America. It works with Filipino communists. It works with Sri Lankan communists. Sri Lanka has just got a communist government now that is cozying up to China, by the way. And Anthony Albanese has been part of this communist network infiltrating the Australian left wing of the Australian Labor Party now for 40 years. His chief of staff, Tim Gartrell, is a member of the Search Foundation. Many of his cabinet secretaries are members or supporters of the Search Foundation. This is a communist operation loyal to China, connected to Russia, connected to communist parties all around the world. So I wrote the book for Australian voters, but also for American and British policymakers, Pacific Island nations, New Zealanders, to understand that Albanese cannot be relied on to defend the Western alliance. He can be relied on to sabotage it every single step of the way. And he needs to be called out on an international level for this, and he needs to be exposed within his own country so his government is defeated at the next election. If Trump can go into the next year with a conservative in Australia, possibly a conservative in Canada, a conservative in New Zealand, and Germany, and maybe other countries as well, we could see a very big change in the world balance of power. But having Anthony Albanese, the communist, if he stays in Australia, that's going to make things a lot harder. And that's why I think it's very important for everybody to understand his background.
Who's the head of the Republicans? I mean, and the right wing in Australia? Is it Scott Morrison again? Or?
No, Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton, who's a good conservative. Scott Morrison was good, and he made a lot of pushback. He did a lot of pushback against China, all of which Albanese reversed as soon as he got into power. His foreign minister, Penny Wong, is an ethnic Chinese from Malaysia, I think, who spent her youth as a communist, as an anti-American radical, and now she's the foreign minister. And not officially, but in practice, she is the deputy prime minister as well. The real deputy prime minister is a guy called Richard Marles from the right-wing faction of Labour, who is also very close to China. But Penny Wong from the left-wing faction of Labour is the de facto deputy prime minister, and I write a whole chapter about her as well. She's as communist as you can get.
And there's also the Five Eyes question.
Exactly. Well, you know, you look at the Five Eyes right now. Right now, you've got a pro-communist president in America. You've got a Marxist in Britain. You've got a communist in Australia. You've got a red diaper baby in Canada, and a very moderate conservative in New Zealand. Well, we need to change at least three of those. We're going to change America pretty shortly. We need to change Australia and Canada as soon as possible.
So who wants to react to what has just been said? Yes, Dr. Li Mengyan.
I'm very interested in your new book, sir. And when you talk about Penny Wong, I'm not sure whether I have mentioned her in this forum before. If I didn't, I just want tell people something I know, and all the media, Mr. Loder know about Penny Wong. So back to 2022, before your election, and that was April, Mr. Loder received a phone call from CCP's agent. A lady claimed she is very close to Xi Jinping, and she said, as long as she tried to persuade us to give up our work anti-Xi Jinping, anti-CCP, because she said that we know without your effort, the United States government won't realize CCP's these tactics. They can't do nothing. They can't do nothing against China. So they want to persuade us to give up the things we are doing, and promise there would be huge benefits for us. So during the phone call, Mr. Loder just asked her, so you need to provide some information to show that you are someone close to Xi Jinping. And at that time, she said something else, of course, later get verified too. And one thing is very important. She said, you know, the people all over the world can't defeat Chinese Communist Party because they don't know CCP's this kind of deep infiltration. For example, she said she's in Australia, but CCP already believe Australia is CCP's garden at home. And she said, you don't know how deeply CCP could control those even local level elected politicians, officers in Australia. And of course, CCP has money. And then she said, you know, there is a person named Penny Wong. And we said we have no idea about who is Penny Wong, because back to April at that time, especially as Chinese, we haven't heard this name yet. So she said, okay, I can tell you, Penny Wong is a Chinese espionage. And she told us that we have evidence. She said, Penny Wong seems mixed blood lady from some Southeast Asian countries, like Malaysia or Indonesia, like that. She said she's the third generation of Chinese Communist Party's liaison espionage family. What is a liaison? It is the most important and covert espionage organization in CCP. So liaison people, they inherited this kind of espionage identity to their next generations. It's kind of father or grandfather, and then passed to one of the offsprings, and China will select it and cultivate them. So Penny Wong is a third generation, and even people, very difficult for people to even trace her back to CCP. And she said, you know, no one else knows she is CCP's espionage, but CCP and Xi Jinping will make sure Penny Wong will be elected this time. And then you will see, she said, you will see how powerful China's influence in Australia. So after 1 month, when Mr. Loder and I saw that, we were totally shocked. But of course, we reported it through our channel to the US government about this. But and after that, when we observed Penny Wong's, all his performance, his opinions, his behaviors, you could see clearly what she has done is consistent with CCP's narrative about CCP1. So I'm glad to hear that you pointed this problem out in your new book.
Well, I did. Focuses on Albanese, but there's a lot on Penny Wong. As she and Albanese are in China every second week, just about. That's an exaggeration, but they have no interest in rebuilding ties to the Western nations, but they're very interested in China. Also, East Timor, which is a little former Portuguese base on the southern tip of Indonesia, is pretty much under CCP control now. And that was engineered by Penny Wong and people like that. So that is very interesting what you say to get that. That does not surprise me in the least. I would say, the idea, I know that this espionage runs in families. The Soviets used to do that too. You would find third generation, the grandson, somebody who was part of the revolutionary forces in the war, their grandsons, their children and grandchildren are still involved in espionage today. So that does not surprise me in the least. And I'd like to talk to you a bit further about that offline at some point.
Now, there was a question I had about the media in Australia, because there seem to be quite anti-CCP, and I watched some of them. So that's kind of a hope. Can we...
Well, Fox News and people like that take a strongly anti-CCP line. So do others, and like Drew Pavlou, who I believe is actually a member of the Labor Party. There's a strong anti-CCP sentiment in Australia, and it was being fanned by Scott Morrison when the Conservatives were in power. But and they recommended, for instance, that the Confucius Institutes all be shut down, while Penny Wong refused to shut down any more Confucius Institutes. She has done everything she can to empower Chinese influence. And the media in Australia, with the exception of Sky News and a few others, basically doesn't challenge China very much. Sky News does, a few others, but the feeling of the people is they are not happy with the CCP. And I hope Peter Dutton makes this a big focus of the election, because Albanese is a communist, Penny Wong is a communist, they're both in China's pocket, and we need a free Australia to be part of the anti-communist alliance going forward.
Since Australia influences a lot New Zealand as well, as you...
absolutely, yeah. New Zealand is a junior partner, as I hate to say that, but New Zealand will not take any brave foreign policy stances unless Australia does it first. New Zealand is very heavily infiltrated by the CCP, very heavily dependent on trade, and has got something like 400,000 Chinese communist, CCP citizens, on our soil, buying up our land all over the place. So we're not going to do anything anti-CCP unless Trump and Australia take a strong stand first.
Jeff, what's your take on that?
Yeah, Australia is a kind of important country, and you can see the Chinese infiltrating the Solomons, Fiji, all these other areas around Australia, East Timor, Trevor just mentioned. There's an attempt to surround it and cut it off from the United States. So, and by the way, I should mention that the CCP has from time to time given this ultimatum to Australia. You have a choice. You can align with us or America, and aligning with America is a big mistake. And they've said this over and over again to Australia.
Explicitly.
Yeah, explicitly, absolutely.
And AUKUS is kind of dead at the moment, isn't it?
Well, it's still officially on the table, but Anthony Albanese is doing everything he possibly can to undermine it. Albanese's got a balancing act, because he can't come out and say, I like China, I'm going to abandon the Western alliance. So he's got this pretense going that he's keeping ANZUS going, but the communist element of the Labor Party has a very big movement called the anti-AUKUS alliance to keep it to get out of it, and that's run by the Search Foundation, which Albanese comes out of, the old CPA, the Communist Party of Australia. And in the same time, Anthony Albanese is pushing the treaty to international treaty to abolish nuclear weapons, which would effectively undermine the United States completely. And he is pushing that on an international level. That is an old Soviet and Chinese program that's been around since the 1950s. And he has signed Australia up to this officially. So that would undermine the Western alliance in itself, but he's still got to pretend that, I'm pro-AUKUS. He's got to keep the Labor right on board. He's got to keep the Liberals on board, but he's got to appease the communist Labor left at the same time. He's got to give them enough to keep them on board, but not enough to scare the horses, especially before the next election. But if he wins the next election, he's going to go full-on communist. I guarantee it.
Okay. Emmett, what's your take on this one?
Well, in terms of the Irish, what's happening in Ireland, there was reports recently coming from British intelligence that there was a Russian agent operating in the Irish Parliament. We also had the Russian Navy was caught in the Irish Sea, apparently hovering around the undersea cables, and a similar thing in the Baltic Sea with the Chinese. So nothing directly related in terms of kind of subversion and stuff like that that I know of. But then again, I'm fully aware of the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative. I know that when it comes to property and so on, I'm surely they're buying up some Irish property as well. But it's the NGO complex, or the non-profit complex in particular, where I think that you'll probably find a lot of operatives. That whole industry is pushing one Marxist initiative or another, pretty much. So that's probably where you'll find them as well. A few years ago, I put this in my book. There was the members of the Chinese diaspora were saying how they told a journalist of some kind that anonymously that there were members of the Irish Chinese diaspora reporting back to the CCP. So I know that they definitely have their tentacles in Ireland. It's just probably not as obvious.
So now that you have started talking about it, can you tell us what has been happening in Ireland this past month? There was elections, and what the outcome of it, and can you brush us? Can you paint us a kind of a situation of Ireland regarding communism?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Ireland is a highly infected country, and the 29th of November we had a general election, and the political right, the nationalist camp in Ireland, were hoping there was going to be some big changes, and a lot of energy was put into the elections and so on, a lot of candidates running, but the kind of right-wing movement in Ireland is very, very small, with 3 nationalistic parties, and who are on the outside. There's no representatives really in the Irish Parliament. And so people had high hopes, but nothing really kind of changed. So that was kind of, some people are a little bit disheartened by that. I wasn't really shocked about this myself. I mean, the whole state, when you look at the establishment parties in Ireland, you got Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, the Labour Party, Social Democrats, People Before Profit. So half of them sound Marxist. The other ones have Irish names, but ideologically they're globalist, so they're all really the same. And being a Marxist in origin, pretty much. So the establishment is captured, as well as the NGO non-profit complex, the mainstream media, the civil service, the education system. It's a highly contaminated country, and a lot of work has to be done. Now, within the right-wing or nationalistic movement, you have splits within that as well. We have people attracted to National Socialism, or other things like that, which aren't really constructive. So it's kind of a developing movement, and people are hoping that things will change. But as I always argue, it's the ideological problem, the rot under the floorboards, is the real issue in Ireland. Recently, also, there was the Israeli embassy has withdrawn from Ireland. They've closed their doors because the Israelis have said that they feel like the Irish government's stances have been very anti-Israel, involving, say, the International Court of Justice and Bibi Netanyahu and so on. The Irish government seems to be showing their kind of colours. Some ways they're trying to deny it, but they're essentially all pro-Palestine, anti-Israel when it comes to their stance. So Some people in Ireland are so brainwashed they were celebrating the Israeli embassy closing. Well, I don't think it's a good thing. I think Ireland should be allying to the West, not the East. But a lot of people, unfortunately, they're too brainwashed to see that. So the political left, the full-on lefties, the pro-Palestine camp, are happy that the Israeli embassy has closed its doors. Also, the people brainwashed, think the Jews are behind everything and so on. They're happy they're gone too. So Ireland's a real confused mess. And I'm kind of shouting into a vacuum, trying to get people to understand that it's really Marxism is the thing causing the problem. But people are starting to catch on to it slowly, but it's been a real struggle because Marxism is really part of the Irish psyche now. We had the British Empire ruling Ireland for a long time. And if a group puts themselves in the oppressed category, it's very hard for them to get out. So I think I'm going to have a real struggle on my hands.
And what's at stake with Ireland? Because it's a small country, but is it influential? And what's the main influence Ireland has in the world?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, in terms of officially, we're supposed to be neutral. We're a member state of the European Union, and we've got, reasonably good diplomatic connections with most countries. In terms of like what Marxism is doing to Ireland, mass immigration is the main problem we have, and it's destroying the country. In terms of like our status or whatever, people think economically it's a great country to be in. It's got like the welfare state, which makes us attractive to a lot of the immigrants. And apparently we're a rich country, but a lot of that's borrowed money, and we're propped up by the European Union. We have a not military base. Shannon Airport in the southwest of Ireland has been used by the Western powers since 2002 as kind of a stopover to the Middle East and so on. And it's no surprise that the lefties in Ireland, some of them are outright Marxist activists, have been at that airport for years protesting against the American planes. So Ireland has been kind of an interesting spot. It's got a long history of communist subversion going back to the 1920s with the Comintern and so on. So Ireland's in a real mess, and I think it's in our interest to start to align to the West more, but a lot of people don't feel that way. Like a lot of people have more ideas coming from, the Cold War thinking that we should just be as afraid of America and Israel as we should be from the East. So the place is a real mess, to be honest.
So Ireland, is Ireland part of NATO or not? Is it neutral to that point?
No, it's not part of NATO. Officially, we're a neutral country. But like the most military action Irish soldiers would get is that they're members of UNFIL, or they have like peacekeeping missions in Africa traditionally, and in the Middle East, even in Lebanon as well. A lot of Irish soldiers end up there, but no official military ties really.
Jeff, did you want to ask a question to Emmett, or?
Yeah, I'm very curious about this in Ireland. How is the Ukraine war covered by the different parties in Ireland? Are they supportive of Ukraine, or is there also in the nationalist parties that are trying to emerge, are they pro-Putin?
Yeah, that's an interesting. So as for the support of Ukraine, first of all, yeah, the lefties in Ireland are generally kind of talking about Ukraine, and my explanation for that, saying that Ukraine officially it's a humanitarian crisis. A lot of the immigrants coming in recent times are for the Ukraine, but then again, as everyone here in this conversation knows, there's all different types of people in this Marxist cult. Some people are full on communism; they believe that's the solution for the world, and they will. There's a lot of Russian pro-Putin shills in Ireland, as well. But when in terms of humanitarianism, the more activist types, like the useful idiots or whatever, would be kind of supporting Ukraine. As for the official stances, from what I've heard anyway, everyone from the prime minister to the second in command, a lot of them talk about Ukraine being a humanitarian crisis. I suppose that kind of props up their mass immigration agenda. Yeah. So again, there's a bit of a divergence of opinion, I think.
Yeah, I wonder what you think of the theory that the Russians are, have come in through the alt-right. They've brought in some anti-Semitism. They've brought in, like the Duganists with their Eurasianism. They've been trying to infiltrate the Catholic Church. And so that on the right, and then you've got the Chinese with their Belt and Road Initiative and their work with the left-wing organizations. It seems, my theory is there's a scissors strategy where the Chinese are running one side of the fence, political fence, and the Russians are running the other, and they're doing it in a way that whatever happens, it's going to be to their advantage. Do you see that in Ireland?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have there's plenty. There's a few 100,000, maybe half a million or up to 1 million people in Ireland who are clearly aligned with international Marxism in one way or another. So, these powers that we're talking about, Russia, China, in particular, they have plenty of people in the country willing to work with them. Like in different initiatives. So nothing would really surprise me, to be honest. And I do believe that they definitely are working as a team, because I believe that they're all together. As I often say, Russia, China, North Korea in particular, they all share a border. They're all pretty much dictatorships, more or less. They're all major points for, this ideological infection in the 20th century. So I believe they're all working together, pushing on different fronts. There are plenty of people willing to help them. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I should note that there are even communist publications in Europe that refer to the regime in Moscow as communist, which I find interesting, a kind of admission. So it's the same in Ireland. I heard the same in Brazil, the same in the United States, Canada. This game is being played everywhere.
Exactly. And during the interview you did on IRCOE, I asked you about the triads. And you said you didn't know much about it, but did you inquire more? Because I've read the triads are really there. I mean, the mafia, Chinese mafia, for those who don't know, and they're really present in Ireland. I don't know why. Well, historically, there's a lot of mafia in Ireland. They even exported it to the US. But there's gonna be why. And there's also Huawei. Very present in Ireland, so the CCP seems to be very over present there.
Yeah, as for the triads themselves, I haven't had a chance to dig into that, John, and I haven't really heard anything yet. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. We have the most obvious character I can think of on the Irish scene is that the mayor of Dublin is Hazel Chu, who is notorious for pushing lefty kind of causes and so on. But in terms of, I mentioned about the diaspora earlier and them saying that people report back to the CCP. But besides that, I haven't really heard much, to be honest.
What about you, Dr. Limenyan? Do you have particular information about Ireland or the triads in general? Is Ireland key to them, or what's their point actually? Are they just a branch of the CCP, or are they doing more than that?
For Ireland, actually, I know very little, so I learned a lot from Emmett. So, and thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. And for triad, yes, I do know a little bit about that, because that is you can say it's the top gun mafia organization originated from China and now all over the world. And so it originated from Fujian province, which is a province opposite to Taiwan. So that was started even back to Qing dynasty. So they have combined a lot of Chinese, like Taoism or other this kind of cultural things inside to make it very strong, that kind of organization. Even after New China established, many of them based in mainland kind of removed, but still it exists. So mainly it now exists in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and also overseas. And of course, you said whether we could say that is a branch of CCP, it definitely now you would say that the majority of them have to work for Chinese Communist Party. And because they are mafia, so that is very useful too for China to, like, they now involved in not only like the Chinatown business, but also involved in casinos and also cartel things and other kind of criminals. So they do money laundering, and they involved into the border crisis in the United States and many other things. So they are widely exist, and China has using this kind of nationalism to kind of recruit them. But of course, China gives them like the freedom and also financial support. And so they are very aggressive. And as I know, the United States government has been focusing on the hating this kind of criminal activities from triad in the US for long.
And coming back to Ireland, Emmett, the island is famous for having headquarters from multinationals from all around the world. And especially one is Huawei. European headquarters are in Dublin. And so how do you explain that a Marxist government tolerate this kind of capitalism? Or is it?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? When I try to explain to people that the biggest problem in Ireland is Marxism and Marxist indoctrination, people who have these older definitions of what the ideology is, you know, the workers' revolution or take from the rich, give to the poor, they're confused because, you know, we have there's a lot of people involved, a lot of money changing hands and so on. As we know, the ideology has evolved, you know, so when I talk to people, people can be rich and billionaire types, but also be ideologically, internationalists, if we want to call it that. They want the international revolution, like your George Soros types and so on. You know, some people who don't understand the ideology would call him a capitalist, but when you look at the way what he funds and what he supports, he's Marxist in origin. So, in terms of the Irish, the way it works in Ireland is we have, you know, it's a westernized country where we've got good tax rates for foreign companies and so on, so it attracts a lot of business. But ideologically speaking, the government is locked into the globalist machinery. It's a member state of the European Union, and the country is really going down the toilet in a lot of ways, I'm afraid, including economically, because as we all know, the ideology causes chaos there as well. So the companies are here now and functioning in Ireland and functioning, but that may not last, I don't think.
Well, thank you. It was very interesting because we scarcely talk about Ireland, but we shouldn't. So now, Dr. Limenyan, can you talk to us about China and what important happened there for the past month and in relation to China, maybe?
Okay, a lot of things important, but I think the most important thing related to Chinese Communist Party, because I'm in US, for me now is how Chinese Communist Party behind the Congress, this kind of chaos, because the bill was supposed to be passed on Wednesday, but now it's still postponed, and it's kind of becomes the argument about between President Musk, Vice President Trump. So this is very ridiculous. But actually, people would ask, what happened? Why Musk posted so many tweets at the same day against the bill? For me, initially I didn't pay much attention on that because I was sick at that time. But then at least the one tweet he posted at that time make me very alarmed that he posted one page of this bill, which lists that the U.S. government will fund some biolabs in the U.S. And he said, this is how U.S. government makes bioweapons like COVID-19. So before we end all this kind of gain of function of bioweapon things, we should not sponsor this kind of biolabs. But that is totally the false narrative, which is very pro-Chinese Communist Party. Because I'm the one know this more than majority of people in the world in this issue. So Chinese Communist Party can do that, not only because of gain of function or your government sponsors the lab, it's because the system. That is a dictatorship country regime, is a communist regime, and people there, they respect the unrestricted warfare, that you do anything without any restriction, without rule of law, without humanity, and just to achieve your goals. So based on that point, whatever things you do well in the US, in France, in Ireland, under your system can be messed up in China. So the problem is not US government funded any biolabs. It's about if you want to regulate your biolab, you can update the regulation. And if you know that there is pandemic or something and they're compromised export, you should do your investigation and oversight. This is something kind of lack of during the pandemic in the US at that time. But now we see the Congress report on COVID-19 origin have already mentioned that, and that's why they did investigation on that. So altogether, US have to do this kind of bio-defense study because your enemy, China, Russia, and the axis of evil countries, they are working on bioweapons against you. If you just say, okay, we cancel all the budget for our biolabs on this kind of related research, that is totally like, okay, we should not have any military. We should not have any PlayStation because what shall we do? This kind of place always have some negative things come out. Or this military, they study missile, and the missile could be used on American soil if the terrorists get that. So this is totally nonsense, especially for people like Elon Musk to use it as a point to attack the House bill, which have been agreed by bipartisan legislators. And also the other thing is, why could he reduce the 1,500 pages of the bill become like around 1,500 pages to 140 pages with over one night? So if almost over 400 legislators can't do it, even can't read through it before they pass it, as Elon claimed, how could Elon Musk and his team just reduce 90% of contents? And yes, I know that he's telling about, okay, these legislators' salary increased for over 40% and their insurance become better, or they found Ukraine. But let's see what's the most important thing they have reduced in the bill. So I'm not sure whether you have noticed this report before, but actually yesterday, South China Morning Post, based in Hong Kong, have talked about this issue. It says the U.S. restrictions on outbound investments to China scrapped from temporary spending bill. Okay, so that means the 1,500-page version include provisions on overseas transactions involving China in sectors like chips, quantum technology, and AI. However, the version from Elon Musk and then go to the House totally removed these contents, these provisions to restrict U.S. investment to China on this highly sensitive technology field. And today also China's official run media, the China state-run media, 观察者, also posted the article, the propaganda. The main point is the previous bill, all of their provision related to China are totally deleted. And the leftover 100 pages version leaves the other things not related to China. And for Chinese Communist Party, even though the second bill was not passed, they still believe that is a huge victory because they have leveraged Elon Musk, as I have emphasized it before in our discussions, that they could have many ways to manipulate Elon, and they can use money, they could use people around Elon, they can use other kind of carrot and sticks to manipulate Elon Musk. And whatever, now Elon Musk has, for CCP's perspective, successfully conducted this kind of protest, inciting US people against the US government, even try to destroy the independent power in the House and to force the legislators to remove the restriction against China. So the thing is, President Trump's administration, they are going to focus on Chinese Communist Party. They have realized the dangers and also threat posed by Chinese Communist Party towards US. And now, what's Elon Musk's role? So who gives a shortened version of the bills to President Trump. I don't think President Trump himself can read through all these things. He may add something what he wants, like no limits about the budget. But for other part, who did that? Who around Elon Musk was coordinating with him for all these things? Like Elon Musk asked people, Americans, to call to their legislators, not only threat, but also just to using this phone, like the bombs, to make them stop passing this bill, original bill. This kind of pressure given by Elon, which is very similar to what happened by TikTok when U.S. government tried to ban TikTok last year. TikTok CEO has launched the same thing, ask people to call them and also threaten the legislators to force them to give up all these choices. So I'm so happy to see that U.S. legislators, they didn't pass the second shortened bills. And for China, they're happy because at least they gain the time. They gain more opportunity to lobby, to try to attenuate this original bill. Remove even they try to remove all of these provisions. And now we need to see Trump has not been voted as president yet. What else will Elon Musk do and the Chinese Communist Party do, not only through Elon Musk, against the US government and to ruin, to destroy America? This is kind of unrestricted war happening on American soil on the very top level to try to change the system in US.
Yeah, and I would like Jeff to answer to this, because I've been saying this for a long time, that Musk has been a CCP agent, and he said, well, we don't have proof, and okay, that's fine. But then how do you understand what Dr. Li Mengyan just said?
It's interesting, and I need to think about it some more. I had the occasion in October to meet one of Musk's lieutenants, one of his friends, just by accident. Ended up having breakfast with him, got to know him, talked to him about Musk and the China thing. Musk's relationship with China is difficult to read. I understand his mother has lived in China off and on. I think maybe she's there now. He's got a peculiar, he's the only billionaire to have an operation in China where he is not a joint venture, where he is his own guy. And that's with this Tesla organization. Now, what I was told is that that Musk is very careful not to leak technology to China. I don't know if that's true. Look, the Chinese have had, the Chinese government has had 5 successful moon probe launches where India and Japan and Russia have failed in their moon probes rather dramatically. China's had these 5 successes. China's the first country to go to the moon and bring back a sample of helium-3, which is something I never read, but I found out from this source. There is, Elon Musk is very close to the Pentagon and very important to the US defense infrastructure because of SpaceX. This is the key to the future. Now, if the Chinese control him, the Chinese would not be suffering the massive losses they're having in terms of satellite competition. SpaceX can launch a satellite for the cost of $1 million per kilogram of weight thrown into space. The Chinese, it costs $30 million per kilogram. And the Chinese are complaining to the US, you have to restrict Trump. I mean, you have to restrict Elon Musk on this. So I see all these cross issues. I think there is a game going on. What side is Elon Musk on? I don't know. It looks like he's on America's side. And then there's these issues that Dr. Li Mengyan has raised. And look, it's the wilderness of mirrors. I would like to have more clarity on it.
Emmett, what's your take on this one?
Oh, it's actually, this is all new to me. I didn't really know much about Musk at all. As far as I knew, I thought he was, I mean, I trust Trump's judgment, and I thought he wanted to bring constructive or conservative people in. But then again, nothing would surprise me. How could anybody study this ideology and not be, kind of or be shocked by the idea that people are not trustworthy or something like that. So yeah, it's all new to me, but very interesting.
So we've been talking about Musk ever since this show existed, and I was always criticizing him for being an agent of the CCP and of the Russians. But what's new now is that Trump engaged Peter Navarro, or Navarro, how do you say it? So this guy is really anti-CCP and anti-Musk. And in 2022, he was invited by Tim Pool, and he said, because at the time, let's remember that Trump and Musk hated themselves. They hated themselves. Trump was writing on Truth Social ugly things about Musk, that he was a nobody, that he was that his cars didn't work and were worthless, and so on and so forth. So Navarro said, the problem with Musk, and that's why he doesn't get along well with Trump, is that he's pro-CCP, and that each and every day he has to kiss the ass of Xi Jinping. That's Peter Navarro's words. So at the time, obviously, it was Biden, and so Navarro was, and then he went to jail for 4 months. Now he's out of jail and is in the new administration, and he's still anti-Musk, and I think he still believes what he believes about Musk, is that he's an agent of the CCP. So I think now, for now, Musk has a lot of influence in the Trump administration, but after the day goes by, I think Musk will just be pushed away more and more. But since he's so influential, I think Trump needs him to be with him instead of against him, if you see what I mean. And so this will take time, but I think in the end, he'll get rid of Musk because he's been taking advantage of him during the election. Musk donated over $100 million to Trump, and now he's planning on donating to Reform UK. Nigel Farage. He said he will give over $100 million or pounds or whatever. So that will be the biggest donation in the history of the UK for a party. And those guys are pro-Russian. It's no, it's no surprise. So, I mean, it's quite clear now that Musk has always been anti-American. He's been pushing this Tesla stuff, this anti-West. I mean, Tesla is an anti-Western and leftist company, and the leftists now are crying because Musk is on Trump's side. But Trump is against the climate change bullshit. So this cannot last long, I think, and it won't. So that's my take on that. Does anyone want to add anything before we switch to the next subject? Dr. Libanian?
So the Federal Reserve announced that the Chairman Powell announced that U.S. Federal Reserve will not keep the crypto coins as a reserve currency. That is a very big hit for Musk and Chinese Communist Party, because it's just think about now FTX is already bankrupted. What's the biggest, most influential this kind of trading place for crypto coins? It's Binance. So Binance is established by CCP's agents. And Zhao Changpeng has already been in jail for a while. More investigation on him is still ongoing. So would you imagine that CCP has no backdoor system in this kind of website? Of course not. So that's why when Chinese Communist Party and they're using Elon Musk and others, and also influence people around them to use together to see the future of the crypto coins. At that time, to think about if the Federal Reserve allow the crypto coins like Bitcoins and ETH to be the reserve currency in the United States, at that time, that actually gave a big door for Chinese Communist Party to use all their this kind of technology and also financial powers to hold the crypto coins and also to use it to shake the fundamental part of the US dollar-based world order. So this would be a very dangerous beginning, and it's very, very great thing is U.S. Federal Reserve rejected that, but that make Elon Musk's his value, of course, because he invested a lot of crypto coins that has done like crazy in a short period, and the same day Elon Musk start to attack the bill in the House. And that bill actually also includes the provisions negative to Chinese Communist Party. And CCP can't afford such provision once it's passed, because in China, the economy is already in a very, very bad situation. So our people okay eat grass according to CCP. Still, there are people, right? I mean, CCP still need people to involve in people's war. If they don't have people, what can they do? So altogether, this is actually a battlefield shifting, like a lot of battlefield for the in the unrestricted warfare. Once CCP say here they get negative, they quickly move to the other part. And also, like the chaos not happened in U.S. Congress, actually, it's similar to just think about if U.S. is a smaller country and with not such strong democratic system for over 200 years. Will it happen as similar things happen in South Korea now? And also what is going on in Taiwan? And also what China want to make in Romania and other countries. These are all actually have something in common. That to make the chaos in your house, in your Congress, among the legislator from the opposite party or against the government, against the rule of law, against the democratic system. And then later, when people get incited, actually the whole social rules kind of fall apart. And that is what the communists, they are expert in that. And CCP especially, they know how to use in this kind of soft skills, not like Soviet Union, being so strong, aggressive to make you realize, oh, this is our enemy. China always smile to you like the panda, hug you, and then bite you because that's panda, that's bear. So that's all, what I want to add in this.
And I had a question about the population in China. Some say that actually it's not over 1 billion. What do you think?
Currently, we really don't have the exact data because it's like people always ask me how many people died in COVID in Wuhan, in China. We don't know. China doesn't give the true record because from the very basic level, once they receive the instruction from CCP, they know CCP need to see the prosperity. They know CCP doesn't want to see the bad data. So from the very basic level, like village and community, those officials, they know they need to keep consistent with CCP's purpose. So they know China doesn't want the people or the population look bad because people will question CCP's ruling. Then the data will become totally messed up. Everyone can just sit there, write data. They will check the previous record and then they will add maybe 1% or 2% or give some kind of plausible change just from their mind. And then their boss say, okay, this data looks very good, even better than our neighbors. That's how it works. So in China, we don't know. But here we have seen that some Japanese report have estimate that the salt consumption in China yearly, and said that Chinese people, the population may be less than 1 billion. And we do see that young generation don't want to have kids now. So the birth rate is going down. But we also need to note that there are some rumors, which is misinformation, originated from Falun Gong campaign. So the master Li Hongzhi, he is a control opposite for Chinese Communist Party. Yes, there are good people, good journalists in Falun Gong organization because they are observed, but Li Hongzhi himself is controlled opposite from our source. So he has claimed that 400 million Chinese people were killed by COVID-19. And then a lot of the KOL, those voice journalists in Falun Gong media, they start to use their theory to reinforce this narrative, claim that Master Li Hongzhi is great. He sees the exact data. And that's my explanation, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is something actually, if you understand communism, you know that is a way to groom people, to make their followers know that, okay, we need to listen to Li Hongzhi, and then later CCP could let them brainwashed. So this is a test. And I always need to tell people that don't be influenced by this kind of misinformation.
Jeff, what do you think, or do you have a question for Dr.
I
Manyan?
very much agree with what Dr. Li Mengyan has said about Falun Gong. My own research has found the same conclusion. Their method is controlled opposition. So if I were, let's say Emmett and I were to hang a shingle of a big anti-communist organization and get a bunch of money, the first people that would rush up to be our best friends and to kiss us on the cheek would be communist agents. That is the problem. And so whether you're on the right or the left, and I think that to comment on what President Trump has done is he follows a zigzag path the way the communists do. He uses indirections to find directions out, as Shakespeare uses the line in Hamlet. And he has his own provocations, which is unique because most of our Western politicians are ideologists. They're not strategists. And I would love to hear Emmett comment on Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer, even though they're not Irish, they're right next door.
Yeah, well, spot on. Thanks, Dr. Yan, as well for the information on the CCP stuff. It's great. Well, actually, it's interesting with Starmer and Reform UK because for a while people were thinking they were kind of like the solution, but then there might be another wolf in sheep's clothing. Of course, we all know about the Fabian Society. All Labour leaders. Going back in history, Labour Party leaders, to Clement Attlee after World War II and so on, are all members of the Fabian Society, which is interesting. Now, the UK was already going down the toilet anyway and had a lot of issues. But I find it interesting that since Starmer came in, they really hit a new period of chaos. And, the whole Fabian methodology was to turn the society towards communism slowly, subversively, with incrementalism, the creeping totalitarianism thing. And so I find it quite interesting what's happening. And it ties into what we were saying, having that nice malevolence disguised as benevolence. And I think Dr. Yan mentioned it earlier that, the old brute force communism of the Soviet Union or, the communist army coming over the hill or whatever it is a little bit different nowadays. And this kind of full spectrum warfare involving economics, property, media, education, charity, NGO complex, and so on. It's much more sophisticated nowadays. And I always come back to the same thing. If people don't understand the ideology and the conspiratorial nature of this revolutionary movement, they don't stand a chance, and that's why the UK, I believe, is probably finished unless something amazing and dramatic happens. And Ireland is not too far behind either. The reason why I was in America recently was because they have a bigger population, more land. They've got weapons, and they've also got, and the general public, and they've also got a bigger population of patriots or nationalists, whatever you want to call it. So they have probably a chance of turning things around. But a lot of the other countries are so far gone, I think, and it's a real shame. But it's all about ideology in the background. We're talking a lot about these, foreign actors, and I think Yuri Bezmenov said years ago that subversion and conspiracy is a two-way street. So if Ireland, for example, was really anti-communist in their outlook, and they understood how toxic this stuff is, then it'd be much more difficult for agents of the CCP or anyone else, or Russia or whatever, or North Korea or whatever, to penetrate the country and to have influence. You wouldn't allow them to get involved with the NGO complex or to buy a property and so on. At least you would have a chance to stop them. But unfortunately, that's not the case, I don't think.
Now, the question with Reform UK, and that's when we'll know whether Trump is on the west side or not, is that Nigel Farage was invited in Mar-a-Lago. That's where he met with Musk, and that's where Musk, under a drawing of Trump, believe it or not, promised him to finance Reform UK. So why the hell does Trump do that? Is it to send mixed informations to the different secret services of CCP and others? Or is it really because he's infiltrated? I don't know yet. It's too many mixed messages, and so either Trump is the best of the best in history to send those kind of messages, or he's infiltrated. And well, time will tell. So now I wanted to, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just had a point on that. I have a kind of theory to explain why this is the case. And when I was in America, I was on a lot of spaces on X, and I did a lot of interviews. And it's possible that, okay, because we all know about communist subversion and conspiracy, maybe there's something going on there. If Farage is not to be trusted, why is Trump working with him? There might be another explanation, that Trump just isn't really fully aware or clued in to what's happening in the UK. You would think in a way maybe he does know, but maybe he doesn't. And what kind of alerted me to that was, I'm sure you've covered it, so maybe I sound like a rookie here, but the whole COVID stuff, some people think Trump was kind of in on it. Other people think he was just listening to bad advice. So maybe he thinks Farage is genuine and he's like the solution to get Britain out of the mess, but he isn't. So I just thought I'd put that on the table. I'm not really sure.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I can comment on this. I did a prolonged investigation. I spent 2 years. I can't publish most of it because the sources are so sensitive. But I know about interactions that happened inside the White House during COVID. I know the arguments. I know the players. And Trump's instincts were not to do what was done, to go with hydrochloroquine, to go with ivermectin, to go with other things. And he was... people were steering him and guiding him, and there was intrigue and conspiracy all around Trump. So when you say, Jean, that maybe he's been infiltrated, he has been infiltrated. And the thing is that we're in a wilderness of mirrors. There's the fog of war, and Trump knows that he's in a fog of war. He doesn't know what we know. He doesn't know what Emmett knows, and Dr. Lee Mignon knows, and I know. And he got people around him trying to keep him blind. But he's got this instinct where he's blind. He's like the deaf, dumb, and blind boy that still plays a mean pinball, right? From the famous rock opera from the 70s. He somehow knows, and you watch him, and he keeps going this way, and he keeps getting pulled back by these people that end up surrounding him. So I think that's what's really going on. That's my interpretation. And I cannot cite sources because they're too sensitive, but I think I know that about him. And so this is a fascinating discussion. And of course, I'm fascinated by, Farage, I think, is in the same position. A lot of these people are well-meaning, but they've been deceived by the Russian active measures and Putin pretending to be a conservative. It really has had an effect on the European right, which was softened up by the alt-right movement, which I could see back 15 years ago was controlled by the Russians. You just look at Alex Jones here in this country, and the people, you look at the LaRouche movement and its ties to Germany and to the East. Lyndon LaRouche was a communist, a teacher of Marxism-Leninism, who wanted to do experiments with forming a right-wing Marxist political party. In 1971, he formed the U.S. Labor Party with help of the KGB in the United States. It didn't work out. That was an experiment. He went on to LaRouche movement. I think a lot of the conspiracy right-wing, pro-Russian right, alt-right are experiments along those lines. And people don't understand that. They haven't come to grips with it yet. So this is very complicated.
And you can add France, because we have a representative of the LaRouche international movement in France called Solidarité et Progrès, Jacques Cheminade, and he was a candidate of the presidency twice, even though he's nobody. And he pushed this narrative maybe among the first ones, and then he was taken by others, such as Alain Soral, who was younger and who was able to touch the younger people on the internet, which Cheminade wasn't able to do, because now he's 85 years old maybe, but Soral is only 65. So it's different generations. And so maybe it's time for me to talk to you about France and what has happened this last month. So there's a new prime minister, François Bayrou, and like the previous one, Michel Barnier is a running dog of the CCP. So nothing will change for France. It's pretty much like Ireland, I guess. It's a continuous downward spiral to bankruptcy and chaos. So to talk about Bayrou, he's an old school politician, 73 years old, Catholic, 6 kids, so-called centrist, but in fact Marxist. In 2006, he claimed on a television show, and I quote, "The goal of my whole life is to keep American civilization out of France." And in 2012, he helped socialist François Hollande to being elected, not supporting Sarkozy. But Sarkozy is pro-Russian, so anyway. Now in 2019, François Bayrou opened the Confucius Institute in the city he was mayor of, Pau. It's the name of the city, and he's still mayor of the city today while being prime minister at the same time. So welcome to France. And in 2020, he was named by Macron High Commissioner for Planning on the model of communists in general and the CCP in particular. And once named, he said, I quote again, "It's a response to the dictatorship of the moment. The Chinese govern 30 years ahead, and we sometimes don't even govern 30 days ahead." So he took the CCP as a model, and he was in favor of all the communist measures during the pandemic, of course, including mandatory vaccination and masks. And he used to not wear masks in public places when the people around him all had to wear masks. You know, these kind of people. So he has been very close to Macron ever since he was president in 2017. So the so-called elections didn't change a thing because Macron named him. He has judiciary problems, frauds in particular, but now that he's a prime minister, everything will go fine for him, I'm sure. His government is not yet known, but the main names that have been circulating are stooges of the CCP, what a surprise, like Xavier Bertrand, who signed a deal between the party of Sarkozy and the CCP back in 2009. Also, Thierry Breton's name is circulating. So he used to be a European commissar, and he left just a few months ago. And I revealed he's part of a CCP United Front, a United Front group called Paris Shanghai Club. Also, the name of Elisabeth Borne has been circulating for a minister, high-ranking minister. So she used to be a minister of ecology when she closed a brand new nuclear power plant in France called Fessenheim. And then she became prime minister. And she's also a member of a Paris Shanghai Club, believe it or not. So she's very close to the CCP too. And no one knows if he's going to last more than 3 months, like the Barnier government. But now we know that France had 4 prime ministers in 2024 only. It's the worst instability since the end of the Fourth Republic, which collapsed in 1958 because it was too unstable. So some say the Fifth Republic may collapse soon. Personally, I don't quite believe it so much because Macron could resign and then we would have snap elections in 2025. So what's your opinion on this? Who wants to react? Jeff?
Well, yeah, the crisis of the French Republic, the fall of the Fourth Republic was almost a civil war in France. You have a serious crisis in France because of the deceptive mode of governing, because the lying, and the you have extremes of psychopathology in French politics, the hatred of the Anglo-Saxon world, the tendency to have a romance with Russia and China, and you have the very weird antagonism to Germany off and on, and then the love and hate. So this is French schizophrenia. They go. It seems like France goes to extremes, and you don't know how it's going to resolve. I mean, just think about it. America is on one republic, and France is on its 5th, right? And although the UK is going down the drain fast, it's still the same basic government since the Glorious Revolution. But then we have this general disintegration of the West. I call it the race to the bottom, and it's like who's going to disintegrate first. And I think what Emmett is saying about this horrible conspiratorial, I call it the new religion. Socialism, communism, this shape-shifting movement that evolves, this inversion of everything or perversion of everything. It is a disease. At the same time, it's a movement. And it seems like China, Russia are the criminal centers, and it is literally colonizing the planet.
Yeah, and I could add to that Jordan Bardella, who is the head of Rassemblement National, so next to Marine Le Pen, he was at the Chinese Business Club this month as a guest of honor. So usually Rassemblement National is pro-Russian, but they're also pro-CCP. And he was pretty much helped by TikTok during the last elections. So there was, even on French television, they showed how TikTok pushed him and all of his party during the elections on TikTok in particular. So just like in Romania, just like everywhere else, basically. And that's why TikTok needs to be banned, and quickly, as Trump would say. I hope Trump will push this and won't save TikTok, because otherwise there's many things that he should do. He should ban TikTok if it's not banned by the time he's in power, and not pardon Miles Guo, because then it will be a very bad signal. Oh yeah, I mean that would be the ultimate signal for me that Trump is on the other side. Actually, if he pardons Miles Guo, the ultimate CCP agent, that will be a very bad sign that he's under the influence of Bannon. Actually, because Miles Guo is hand in hand with Bannon. I think Dr. Limanian knows more on this subject than anybody else on earth, and so maybe she can add anything if she wants.
Miles Guo is very top MSS trained, a Ministry of State Security trained espionage, professional espionage, and he gained Xi Jinping's trust. That's why he is sent to the United States, disguised as whistleblower, but actually is controlled opposite. And then also one of his task at that time, in the beginning of his whistleblowing, is to help CCP, help Xi Jinping to clear his opponent in China, in CCP, especially at that time, the Prime Minister Wang Qishan and his campaign, because Xi Jinping needs to leverage this kind of whistleblowing scandals from overseas, from Guo's campaign, to use as a handler to investigate and also restrict the Wang Qishan and his campaign using anti-corruption, this kind of excuses. And that really worked very well, we have to say, because Xi Jinping is a master of this kind of unrestricted way. He has a best friend who is the Go master. Go is a Chinese chess that using white, black, this kind of pieces to play. And so Nie Weiping, the world-class Go master, is his best friend. So they know how to manipulate these things in combination with Chinese culture. That's why I call it a soft skill. However, after that, when Miles Guo gained this kind of reputation from the public and a lot of conservative Americans, his another mission become more important. That is to influence conservatives in the United States through Bannon, this channel, because at that time, that's the best channel he has established, and to reach to President Trump's level. So that's why later when he established his media based in China called Getter, that means actually get Trump. And the best thing, they want Trump to go to that platform. But at the last moment, that goes through my channel, President Trump gets this information message, and I got feedback that President Trump will never go to Getter, and he didn't. So the thing is, Miles Guo is doing this kind of information war, cognitive warfare, plus other things like the bribery and also blackmail, this kind of all the tactics as a professional espionage for Xi Jinping in the United States to help Xi Jinping to mislead the U.S. people and also the U.S. politicians, government, to make the wrong judgment against China. That's why if you have a chart, you can see there are a lot of so-called whistleblowing materials, information from Guo's campaign. Actually, turns out these are the misinformation, and the only purpose is to facilitate Xi Jinping's purpose. For example, when they back to 2022 February, when older media exclusively released that Putin and Xi Jinping signed the secret deal from our sources at the beginning ceremony of the Winter Olympic to become the close ally against the U.S. what happened in Mao's Guo's campaign. Mao's Guo released information. He announced that Putin sent his team to China, but Xi Jinping assassinated, poisoned some of Putin's assistants. So Putin is very angry, and he left China at that day of the Olympics because he just stayed in China for 1 day. So if Mao's Guo's campaign wins this info war, then that means they could change the opinions from the West, especially conservatives America. Let them believe China and Russia fall apart. So they would rely on China to defeat US when the Ukraine war starts, right? And also, why at that time, he tried to show he's supporting my work, telling the COVID-19 truth origin. That is because Lude media was very influential at that time already, at the early beginning, at the end of 2019, very, very influential. And Xi Jinping, one hand, asked the Chinese media like CCTV, those people, to learn from Lude media why Lude can become such successful, so influential, and also surprise audience in China, arrest them, disappear them. On the other hand, he will know who is behind Lude. From CCP's perspective, they thought Lude is some CIA kind of backed this kind of media, anti-Chinese Communist Party. And before Mao's Guo, at that time, Mao's Guo actually managed to gain Lude's trust because Lude didn't expect such big traps at that time. However, at the same time, before Lude get kind of eliminated by Mao's Guo and CCP in the US, I came out because I revealed the COVID-19 truth in January 2020. And at that time, Xi Jinping was shocked, and Mao's Guo received the mission that to figure out who's behind me and who is behind Lude. Why could we let this truth come out? Because only very few people in China knows this kind of top secret. And that's why Mao's Guo immediately changed his attitude to Lude at that time, and also tried to figure out, ask Lude who is the whistleblower. Lude didn't tell him. Instead, Lude protected me until end of April. I must leave Hong Kong. And Lude turned to get help from Mao's Guo because Guo claimed that he would financially support anti-CCP people all over the world. And Guo thought that is a great opportunity for him to make a big contribution for Xi Jinping to figure out who's behind me, especially when he know when I was in Hong Kong, he knows that I'm a lady. So for them, they thought it's easy to remove me. But the more important thing is they need to know who's behind me, who could supply this kind of information for us. And that's why he pretend to help Lude and ask the foundation to buy the tickets for me to go to US. And from that time, he tried to know all these things. He tried to suppress me. And a lot of things, like I go to Fox News, I go to Tucker Carlson's interview. These are not related to Mao's Guo. He tried to suppress it. But at that time, like Fox News, and they know this, so they want to interview me. And for Guo, this kind of unrestricted tactics for this CCP member, one key point is you need to be flexible. So he's very flexible. He thought once I go to Fox News, that could help him to gain the trust from conservative Americans. And he thought, I can't do much even I go to Tucker Carlson's interview, but he could gain the credibility from me. And after that, once he eliminates me and Lude media, he will own all the credibility. And that's their dream. So altogether, I want to keep it in short in this episode is, I want to tell people Mao's Guo is a big criminal, not only for Americans because he delivers the misinformation, he conducts unrestricted warfare, he's working with a group network of CCP's agents around President Trump and everywhere in US to conduct Xi Jinping's missions. But also, he takes advantage of the trust from anti-CCP people. Numerous of people who trust him, based in China or even overseas fall into CCP's traps, and they are gone now. We don't know whether they are alive even. So he deserved even more than life sentence in jail, but definitely the bottom line is he should not be pardoned, because if he's pardoned, that is a victory for Xi Jinping. He will show Mao School as an example for other Chinese espannages. See, whatever you have done in US, the big damage you created, don't worry. Xi Jinping will protect you.
So he's in prison at the moment?
Yes, and his sentence will be announced on January 6th.
Oh, January 6th, okay. And he could be pardoned on the 20th or the days after?
Currently, his campaign and Xi Jinping is definitely working on that. They still have their people can establish the channel to President Trump. And so we have going through our channels to remind that to people around President Trump. But currently, I think it's not very possible he could gain the pardon at this moment, because back to January 2020, Mao School has admitted to me and Lude that he was working on pardon in Trump's administration. His team even did the presentation, but finally, Bannon received that. He didn't. And at that time, he was even not being arrested or under this kind of trials for several weeks in New York. So currently, I don't think it's easy for him to get it. And also because he messed up Xi Jinping's a lot of operation, and also he makes enemies inside CCP because he helping Xi Jinping to clear those opponents. So there are other bunch of people who would fight against him inside CCP. And that also increased the difficulty for him to get pardons.
Okay, so we'll have a look at that. So we're arriving at the end of our show, so I'll leave you 1 minute each to conclude. Who wants to start? Emmett?
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to say thank you, John, for the invite. It's been great and educational as well. I'm not too strong on the geopolitical stuff sometimes, but I've learned a lot tonight, so it's been great. And actually, just a comment on France as well, because you mentioned France. France is highly infected, I'm afraid, with the brainwashing, and it goes right back into history, as you know. So it remains to be seen there. But certainly, from Ireland's perspective, we've got a real struggle on our hands to get out of this mess, pretty much.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting this invitation, Emmett. It was very interesting to hear about everything about Ireland and the rest. So, Jeff?
Well, I guess, Miles Guo was the subject of Dr. Li Mengyan's discussion, and it's very educational because of his influence on the right. And it shows that the possibility that agents from Russia and China can have this powerful influence, not only on the left. We think of leftists as being the useful idiots, but we've got a lot of useful idiots on the right. I think Tucker Carlson is a really good example of that, and it's something that we need more sophistication. We need to listen to voices like Dr. Li Mengyan. We need to listen to Emmett, who is telling us about this new religion, socialism, this ideology that's flexible and shape-shifting and continues to push us over the edge into perversion. And of course, meetings like this, John, thank you so much for the forum, because this helps educate people that this is happening in every country. It's not just happening in America. It's not just a communist under the bed in America. It's really happening in every country.
Yeah, well, thank you to participate in this education, and a lot of things I can understand now is thanks to your work. Ever since you've pushed the Golitsyn book and thesis, and then you wrote your own book, Origins of the Fourth World War. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to you. And so, Dr. Li Mengyan, your conclusion?
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you and our audience. And I'm very appreciative that John has organized this regular forum for us. I would treat it as friends gathering monthly, and we have our friends like Jeff and John, and also we have new friends like Emmett. And I'm not familiar with Trevor, but I start to know more about his opinions because we had discussed for not only one time already. So I hope, this conference could let us know more friends. Like, for example, when I know Emma's opinions on international communists from the interview you posted, I would feel, actually at that time, I feel very exciting because not many people want to touch this topic. And even for Chinese people, most of them would think international communism seems like the out-of-date term. We should be gone already after collapse of Soviet Union. No, they're still there. They're very active, very massive network, and they're even more powerful than Soviet Union's period because the situation changed. So there are a lot of things we need to work together to share our opinions, to learn from each other, and to help people to know what is the key points they should notice, be aware of, and also defeat the misinformation. And that's all the things I'm happy to be involved in. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, Dr. Limenyan, and for your work ever since the COVID, the Chinese virus broke. And so, yeah, I'm doing all of this because in France, people really are not able to understand if they see only me saying it. So they see other people talking about the same things all around the world, as Jeff said. So it's not just in France, it's not just in the US or in Ireland or in China or in New Zealand, Australia, it's everywhere, by the way. And so that's why I created IRCOE as well. And I'm sure, and I must say thanks to Endeavor News because they're doing a show, and I've been interviewed there, and that's how I discovered Emmett. And so they're interviewing a lot of great people if you can watch them. So I will put some of their shows on IRCOE, and that will be the gathering of most anti-communist in the world. And I'm sure we are many more than this. It's just that we don't know the people in South Korea. It would be very interesting to have the opinion of a South Korean on everything that's happening right now in South Korea. So I'll be searching for these people. They must exist, but it's hard to find them. And once because as I was explaining to Emmett, once I found him, I must check that he's not, anti-Semite guy or some because you could be anti-communist and anti-Semite, and I don't want these kind of people on my show. So that's really, I think, positive for the weeks and months to come. We'll have huge events all around the world, not just in the US with the inauguration, but with TikTok. Is it going to be banned or not? And then the elections in UK, not UK, it already went, but in Canada and in Australia, and maybe in France. Maybe we could have snap elections again because it's so unstable. And so right-wing people are coming back, at least in Canada and maybe in Germany. So in the months to come, so it's rather quick. And Milei is doing great. I mean, what he's doing in Argentina is really a masterpiece. So I hope this will change the position on anti-communism, because he's really anti-communist, and we need to bring back anti-communism that they try to kill. So thank you for your time, and thank you for everybody who watched this show. I have something to read as a conclusion. So I want to thank our guest to have participated in this 9th International Anti-Communist Conference. You can watch the 8 previous ones on the playlist on this channel. And we give you a rendezvous next month for the 10th conference, mostly to debrief the nomination of Trump and everything around it, I guess. You can like this video, subscribe to this channel to be warned about the next videos in French and in English. And also thank the people who watched us live, who commented in the chat. Take care and brace for impact. Bye-bye, everybody.